Hi, my name's Rob Myatt. I'm going to be reading from my translation of Russian Specialities by Dmitrij Kapitelman, published by Hansa Verlag and a New Books in German jury selection for spring 2025. The Russian weatherman is issuing a warning to Russian TV land, and therefore also to my Russian TV landish mother, who for decades has been engaging with the Russian world from the safest place in all of East Germany, Leipzig. The Siberian city of Achinsk is being pounded by unseasonably fierce snowstorms and freezing rain, with temperatures plummeting to -30. Residents are urged not to leave their homes unless absolutely necessary. On TV, meanwhile, the residents of Achinsk are going about their spring business calmly, untroubled by the whips of ice. Pensioners schlepping their Russian shopping towards Soviet-era Russian apartment blocks. Russian snow towering over them to the right, Russian snow towering over them to the left. A parted sea of Russian snow, as if Moses had briefly lent a helping hand in Achinsk, so that people could still go out and buy their venerated pickled crayfish and tomatoes tinned in Russia. In today's Russia, Moses, or Moses Abramovich to give him his paternalistically Russian name, would probably be arrested under Russian law, one count of causing division. A boy bundled up in dozens of scarves flies high on a swing amidst the snowstorm. Militiamen and firemen tap on icicles hanging from roofs, sounding them out for unpatriotic sentiments. Still, you can see the stray dogs of Achinsk, whining as they look for shelter. Curious that the Russian propaganda channel has included the dogs in the broadcast. Russian realities aren't normally meant for Russians out here, even the realities of Russian mongrels. So what? Achinsk can get to -50 on a good day, my mother cries, agreeing with the weatherman to an extent, while at the same time coolly correcting his cultural knowledge, in symbiotic dissonance with the Russian program. Her voice resonates with pride. Pride in what, though? The mighty Russian cold? The ability of Siberian shoppers and high flyers to Russian their way through this relentless cold? A few rays of East German sunlight fall through the kitchen window onto my mother's greyish-yellow hair, the result of too much smoking and too much aging. Her cigarette roller became so worn out she had to replace it. As always, the dining table is littered with umpteen items that have nothing to do with dining. Tubs of tobacco, charging cables, pills, cat brushes, letters, torn out pages from calendars, and somewhere buried under all of it, baked aubergines with Georgian-style walnut paste, which my mother can now Russian up like an expert. She's been retired ever since our own Russian specialty shop, the Magazine, was closed down. She's gotten rounder too, although she's still rough around the edges. Quite rough, in fact. She's turning into Grandma one rough edge at a time. Except, Grandma would insist on watching the German weather forecasts every day. The more times a day, the better. And yet most of the time she stayed inside, in her German apartment, because outside, hardly anyone understood my Russian-speaking Grandma. And now, her daughter watches multiple Russian weather forecasts a day from the most unpogromish place in all of East Germany. Sometimes I watch them as well, because I have no choice when I visit her and Dad. And as I watch, I often think about how you can get a really good measure of the atmosphere in a country by how politicized its weather forecasts are. Recently, the maps showing all the major Russian cities have started displaying Ukrainian cities stolen by the military, as if they had always been marked on maps. Cities like Russian Donetsk, 3 degrees and sleet. Paradoxically, my mother has spent hardly any time in Russia itself. She was born in Siberia, but when she was 3 years old, Grandma took her daughter to the warmer climes of Moldova. Little Lara couldn't handle the Russian cold. Her Russian father was long gone by then, abandoning the two of them. Moldova is where my mother matured into a woman, and once she was all grown up, this woman decided to move to the big city, to Kiev. She went to Russia for a second time in 1986, and even that was just for a short trip to Moscow. She took me along with her, in her belly, maybe so that I would get to hear the most well-spoken of all well-spoken Russian cities at least once through her body. Even now, she's still enamoured with the place. Moscow, there's no other city like it, she'll say. She went back home to Kiev to have me, though, obviously, raising me in the Ukrainian capital. So apart from her language and her talking TV, my mother has virtually zero connection to the Russian state. But what does that mean, apart from language? Since this war started, I've lost all notion of what language even is, what it's for, what it wants, what it's capable of, if it belongs, who it belongs to, where it belongs, how much language is subservient to time. My relationship with my mother's language, with my mother tongue, wasn't always so depressingly political. There were times when the words between us were faithful envoys of trust, not murky ambassadors of belonging or petrol division, of innocence and war crimes, life and death ultimately.